Hi there and welcome back to the ESPN Footy Podcast.
Hello everybody, welcome to the ESPN Footy Pod for another week, proudly sponsored by Subway. Get your mid-match feast delivered fresh. Subway, eat fresh. I'm Matt Walsh, Jake Michaels and Christian Joly from Champion Data are in the studio once again. There's a lot to get to this week with just one round left in the home and away season. Jake, another pretty incredible weekend of footy, but it's been back-ended by controversy. We had the Patrick Cripps stuff before the round of footy. We had the Essendon saga drop yesterday. That's Monday. We did a very special bonus episode with Rowan Connolly about that, so check that out if you're keen to hear his thoughts about that. But there was also plenty to discuss from on the field.
There was, and I'm glad we did the special episode with Rowan yesterday because this episode would be going an hour and a half if we didn't.
And if we had him on.
Yeah, gee. He's got a real
very passionate man.
Love-hate relationship with the Bombers, Rowan.
And it's well worth listening to be fair. He made a lot of really good points. He's a very passionate guy. Hasn't ruled out being part of a rival ticket if one was to ever pop up as well. So
I tell you what, he'd be putting his hand up to if Rutten does eventually go at some point, he'll be the first person to put his hand up and say, let me coach this side. Yeah, no, he is. You're right. He's very passionate. And obviously it was a massive talking point after the horrible performance against Port and then obviously into yesterday as well. So, we probably won't be talking too much about that because we did it yesterday. But, I honestly cannot wait for Friday. 4 massive games I'm looking forward to this week. And as the listeners know, 3 Carlton fans here, so Sunday is going to be must watch.
Well, Saturday night was it was an interesting game. It was actually really good. I thought the intensity of the contest really set the tone for what is going to be a massive final series. I think Carlton and Melbourne were both trying their guts out, contested footy, tackles, smothers, the whole lot, and it had this real sort of September air about it.
It did, and it also proved, particularly in the first half where it was very low scoring and contested, that high-scoring games don't necessarily mean great games. Now, I will say that the Bulldogs-Giants game was really, really tough to watch. That was just, I think the Giants took 165 marks. It was keepings off. It was really grim watching. But I thought Melbourne and Carlton was just an epic contest, particularly in the first half. And then it did open up in the second and we saw more scoring. So I think as a Carlton supporter, I was disappointed that we lost the game. We probably shouldn't have lost the game. But I think I was pleased with the way we played, and I think if we can bring that intensity and effort again against the Pies on Sunday, we'll give ourselves a big chance of winning.
Been a bit of talk, Christian, about potentially, well, I don't think it's going to happen, but fans would like to see 3 games being played simultaneously on the Sunday because they all have different effects on the makeup of the 8. As a statistician, I can sort of tell that you would not want that to happen because it means spreading a lot of resources over many games starting at the same time. But as a fan, would you want to see many games start at the same time so you can have this Premier League final day kind of finish with a flurry?
Yes, I was sort of torn between, and again, I grew up with Saturday afternoon footy. It was 5 games on Saturday, and as I said, you sit at Waverley and look up at the scoreboard, and
look up enough grounds.
You wouldn't get Carlton versus Collingwood on the scoreboard. You get A versus B and D versus E, so you'd have to buy a footy record to work out what the scores were. So, and I do like the Premier League. I've watched a few final days of Premier League, sort of, and I don't follow the Premier League all the time, but because it gets to that final day and it's sort of easy to wrap up. But again, just AFL, the length of the game, I don't know. I couldn't see it working in AFL. I like the way this Sunday sort of works.
Everyone always brings up the Aguero moment, and that's fair enough because that was one of the most epic moments in sports history.
Yeah.
But for every Aguero final match day, final kick of the season, it's not always like that. So it's not like changing them all to be on at the same time is going to guarantee anything.
100%. But last year, if all games were played as a final day thing in the last round of last season, there would have been 20 changes throughout the day on the ladder. Right?
The ladder
in the
AFL?
Top 8? No, in the top 8, sorry. This year, there will at different times be different machinations and ups and downs, and you can sort of see the merit in it. But you're staunchly you want to watch every game back to back to back and not have to go back and watch recordings.
Absolutely, I don't like.
But not everyone's like you. There might be fans of St Kilda who might watch St Kilda games and then maybe the Friday night game.
I've told you the thing that annoys me more than anything is the little Fox score in the bottom right hand corner that you can't turn off. And I've said it before. I put a book in the corner of my TV to cover the score so I can watch the second game and not not have any spoilers.
Yeah, you're a unique unit. We talked about the Bombers special that we recorded yesterday. The AFLW is also just around the corner, and the girls are back on the pod. Marissa Lordanic and Sarah Burt have just dropped the first episode of that as well. So welcome back to them, and welcome to Sarah Burt as well.
Yep, absolutely. And it's sneaking up with the earlier start this year.
I know. Yeah, August start, November finish. So keep your eyes peeled on the podcast wherever you get your podcasts for those as well. They've just released a massive team-by-team preview and their season predictions, so get stuck into that. Before we get cracking, we've got a lot to talk to. We're going to talk confidence players. We're going to talk Nick Daicos, and he's probably going to be the rising star. We're going to talk the Tigers, but before we do that, something from round 22 that took your fancy, Jake.
I think 5 or 6 weeks ago now, it was this Richmond Gold Coast game. No, Richmond North game, where Noah Cumberland took that mark right at the end. No, sorry, it was Freo. What am I talking about? It was against Freo.
They've had a few close finishes.
They have. Though 3 in a row. So that was the third one. He took that mark 50 out. And I think my thing I noticed was the Jack Riewoldt reaction when he played on. And he had his hand, like that, the emotion. He's one of the most emotional players, like visibly. Yeah. And I thought that was great. There was something similar on the weekend or Friday night when Max King just missed shot after shot after shot, which I think we will talk about soon. And I think after like the 4th or 5th one, they just cut to a guy in the crowd and the despair and anguish or look on his face as he sort of just falls over almost. I thought that's just going to become a meme for everything St Kilda. It kind of sums up the season as well. I just was laughing my head off when I saw that.
Having been a Carlton supporter who didn't really get to see a lot of the success of the club in maybe the 70s and the 80s, it hasn't been a great time for me, but I can just sort of almost gratefully say that I'm glad I've not been a Saints fan, because they've copped it for much longer, and they've had some, strange ups and downs.
They seem to always be, you might correct me here, Christian, but they always seem to be, at least in the modern sort of era, one of the more inaccurate teams. And inaccuracy must frustrate fans more than anything.
And again, it goes back to Ross Lyon days, I reckon, was it Ross Lyon brought in Ben Dixon as a goal-kicking coach, and I reckon he lasted 3 weeks and they went backwards and they got rid of him and then brought in another goal-kicking coach next year. And then now Brett Ratton's always very quick to say that they don't want anyone coming in from outside to work with Max King. So it's been a long-term issue for
Get the G train down there.
They play at Marvel too, which kind of adds to the...
yeah.
Wow. Anyway. Christian?
Freo West Coast. So the main game on Saturday night. Let's forget about the other one that was played for a minute. The derby across in Perth, and 150-metre penalty paid against Caleb Sarong, which I've seen before. I'm sure Fev, I reckon, probably the last player I can remember giving away.
I reckon he did that twice.
I reckon there was one earlier this season.
150?
100 metres, sorry.
150 metres, but he was only 90 metres away from the goal. So how does the umpire, again, it really frustrated me as a statistician having to put that in. The umpire paid 350s from the spot, so he didn't pay a 50, get further down, pay another one and start running it. He just said, at the spot, he said, that's a 150-metre penalty, summed up 3,
Makes no sense.
And then just took him to the goal line. And we were, struggling. What do we pay? Do we pay do we pay 3 50-metre penalties? We had to, because that's what the umpire had verbally said he was paying. He paid it. I just thought, again, just overkill. It's just from 90 metres out, surely it's 2 50-metre penalties, and I'm going to give him another kick after the goal. Because that allows Sarong just to keep doing things. That's a 200-metre penalty, that's a 250-metre penalty.
It's like when, as soon as the siren goes, you see all these fracas develop, because they know that you can't pay a free kick once the siren's gone.
Which
and
makes no sense. Why can't they? Why can't they pay a free kick afterwards if someone
or start the next quarter or something?
With the 50-metre penalty stuff, sometimes we saw... So, again, not to talk about the Carlton game, but Melksham took that mark 5-7 metres out, just outside the square. And was it McGovern that ran in? Someone ran in, and then he took the 50, walked straight and kicked the goal. I don't know what the expected scores are, but it's probably 5.6 to 5.9. Yeah. So just clever. He knew the player was going to come. But sometimes when a player, and I see it with James Sicily and some defenders sometimes, the hot-headed defenders, their opponent will take a mark like in the goal square, and they'll know, a 50 from 2 metres out to on the goal line is nowhere near as bad as 52 metres out to 2 metres out. So it's worth giving the umpire a spray at that moment, because what do you got to lose? Just get it off your chest at that moment. So yeah, I don't know that. I did notice that, but I also noticed he was missing one of his
he had a bit of a Tarzan
shirt his shirt was ripped off. There were a few players this week that were missing a bit of the
feeling
jersey.
in a few of these games. The Derby was one in particular where it just always seems to boil over
Yeah.
at some point.
I think Jeremy Finlayson.
I think people in Perth and the players at these Perth-based clubs have just been a little bit upset the fact that the showdown might have been getting a little bit more attention in recent years.
Well, it's been a better watch.
Oh, there you go. Hey, something I noticed. The Giants and the Dogs game wasn't really one which was all that entertaining.
It was crap.
It wasn't great.
Put the explicit on. It was really bad.
Put the big E. Ended up only being, it was pretty close in the end. It was only a one-kick game as it finished. The Giants had their moments to try and win the game. Kicked 3 goals in a row at one point. The Dogs also kicked 4.
They looked the winner for a fair while there.
But the style of gameplay, and Mick Malthouse would have summed it up best by calling it basketball crap. But the Giants played just this bizarre keepings off type of style in which they finished with 165 marks on the ground to the Dogs 91, but only 8 inside 50. And it was just so illustrative of a team that was doing its best to bring the game down to its level and maybe scrape a narrow victory in a low-scoring game. And the Dogs, it almost bloody worked for the Giants because the Dogs almost lost and it would have ended their season. Yeah,
and the Dogs did somehow get the win, but that's got to be really concerning that a team like the Giants, who have really struggled all year, played the game on their terms.
Yeah, and again, their terms have really changed since Leon Cameron left early in the season. And someone said it to me in the office before. If you look at GWS, their caretaker coach has coached more games than their initial coach was meant to. So it's just sort of too long to be a caretaker coach. And you look at their game style since Leon Cameron left, it's just sort of biding time. They are very high for marks, very high for kick shorts and backwards, not high for sort of trying to go forward and take territory or anything like that. And that game against the Bulldogs was sort of the heightened, the top of it where we saw it really come to the fore. But they've been playing a number one marking style for the last, as I said, probably 10 weeks since Leon Cameron left. But it just seems like they're just trying to just get through games. I sort of spoke about with you guys earlier. We know there's a lot of guys coming out of contract or that could be getting traded to sort of help with the salary cap. They're going to have a new coach. So it's almost, what do these last 10 weeks mean? They're sort of just trying to get through by time. And it's all about the off-season. We've got to regroup and go again. And, I don't know what they're planning for next year because they don't know what game style or what sort of, what even playing list they're going to have exactly next year. So it was a really weird end to the season for the Giants for me.
One game to go in Canberra. They've not been good in Canberra recently. I believe that the stats like 1 from their last 8 or 1 from their last 9 that they've won. So
not good.
No, not. It's just not been the season that they would have set out.
Not good, but also Freo don't. It's not as if Freo play in Canberra that often. I don't know if they ever have. Off the top of my head, I certainly can't think of a time they have. Danger game for the Dockers. If the Giants can sort of play that sort of style,
that's what I'm saying. Final day EPL style. Machinations happen but.
With the final day, we're still going to have Saturday, Sunday. So what, you're going to have some on...
Nah, do them all on Saturday, 2:10.
The broadcasters will love that.
Yeah. All right, let's get into things. Interestingly, it was a Reddit thread that kind of tipped me off on this from the user NitroXYZ. And basically, it was talking about Max King. We touched upon King and his lack of accuracy in the game against the Lions on Friday night. That's one way to put it, I guess. But the thread was basically, is Max King the most confidence-reliant player in the game right now? And that sort of tipped me off because is there such thing as a confidence player? Because it's definitely one of those like footyism or footy myths that you hear, especially if you're talking about a forward. I reckon back in the day, like my old man would always be like, Travis Cloke, if he kicks an early one, he'll be on. He's got to have that sort of confidence kick to get ahead of the game.
Every team had that player that we felt like was the one you needed to get an early goal. Yeah.
So this Reddit user worked out that he kicks 60% of his shots on goal for the rest of the game if his first shot is on target. So he's a 6 out of 10 kick if he kicks if the first kick that he has at goal is a goal. But just 35.7% if his first shot misses, which is pretty illustrative of a quote-unquote confidence player. But
is that for the year or career?
This is, I think, for this season, but I could have to double-check that. So, Christian, we sort of asked you if we could kind of boil down what a confidence player might be, and I think you've taken it to another level, putting it up against expected scores, which we've talked a fair bit about on this podcast before. How does he compare when you look at that stat compared to his expected scores? And then are there any other players in the league where you can look at and say, yeah, they are a quote-unquote confidence player in front of goal?
Yeah, so I think the guy on Reddit had nailed it. Sort of, it's probably a good way to look at it in terms of, if you kick your first one, how accurate are you? And if you miss your first one, how accurate are you? But again, sort of taking what we've spoken about, expected scores, if you have all your shots from the goal square, you're more likely to have 100% accuracy than if you're taking more outside 50. So it's really looking at this year only, looking at every player in the competition, whether they had a shot at goal and whether they missed first or kicked a goal first, and then just looking at every shot after that taken throughout the match and just working out the expected accuracy and how they've done from that point on. So he's right with the Max King stat. So looking at expected accuracy, if he misses his first shot, he kicks the rest of the game at negative 22% for expected accuracy. So again, if he's he might be 20 out straight in front, like we saw a couple of times on Friday night, and just misses. Yeah, correct. So he's again, a 50% shot, he's only going to hit 30% of the time and so forth, because he's always 20% below the comp average for all of his shots. That's after missing one. And that's basically, of the guys that have at least, missed a shot and then followed up with another 10 shots, it's the worst expected accuracy of anyone. So once he misses his first shot, he drops to like the lowest expected accuracy of any player. If he nails his first shot, though, again, the rest of his shots are negative 7% below expected accuracy. So that's a big part of this thing on Max King is overall he's inaccurate. Yep. So you got to start there. He's an inaccurate player. He's not quite at the comp average. But yes, if you look at his numbers and in terms of confidence, he's a lot more inaccurate if he misses his first shot.
It's weird, isn't it? And this is someone who...
It's a good pickup.
Well, is a career forward. So this is someone who, for the next 10 years at least, is going to be working on that craft week in, week out. And you think that, there's probably a mental side to this as well. It's not just a physical thing. Even though his kicking action can be...
I think that highlights how much of it is mental.
Yeah.
Because the more you miss, the harder it seems to be to kick accurately.
And he has the next 10 years, obviously, but he needs to quickly, I think, develop a routine or something which can clear his head, or there needs to be processes in place, or, bring someone in, like we were discussing before, to kind of help with this, because it's pretty damning that he's below the comp average as it is, but if he misses his first shot, you can almost sort of say that St Kilda aren't going to be as competitive as what they could be.
And I think we could see it live. On the weekend, I mean, every time he took the mark, you could just see on his face he wasn't confident, and then he took the next mark 10 minutes later, and he looked less confident than he did.
He was rushing, and he's not that I'm Jason Dunstall giving advice, but it's obvious watching that he doesn't look confident with his walk in and his run up and the ball drop, everything. He's not running directly at goal. He looks like a player that's lacking confidence at the moment, and he is young. I don't expect this to be an issue throughout his career. There's been lots of promising key forwards that have come in and had accuracy issues that have been able to improve over the course of their career.
There are also a lot who haven't been able to improve. If your accuracy when you're 20 is whatever it might be, there are some players who are pretty plateaued and stagnant over the course of time.
You're writing him off.
No, I'm not writing him off. I just think that it was just interesting that you can quantify this, and then when it does, there are obviously stats that you can read on a page or on a computer, but when you watch the eye test as well and combine those two, you can kind of see that there are some issues there with his confidence, quote unquote. Any other players that sort of, when you ran the query, Christian, came up as either confidence players, or as in they're not as good, or they are better, or what it might be? Yeah,
so as I said, Max King went from negative 2% up to negative 7%, so below either way.
Negative 20.
So that's where he started. So the player that's confidence goes up, sort of thing. If he nails his first shot, Liam Ryan's probably the biggest one in the comp. So when he's missed his first shot this year, he's at negative 7% expected accuracy. So not terrible, but again, just not hitting him as much as he should if he misses his first shot. If he nails his first shot, he's plus 30%, which is just an elite number to be plus 30%.
The ultimate confidence.
Riding high.
And it's a good sample size. I think it's about 16 or 17 shots that he's had after kicking a goal. So that's a 37% swing. So if he misses his first one compares to kicks it, there's a 37% difference on the rest of his accuracy.
It's a mental thing as well. It's because we're looking at expected scores. So it's not like he's getting all of his subsequent shots 10 metres out right in front. It's wherever he's kicking them from, he is plus 30% or whatever it might be, compared to the comp average from that spot.
That's it. If your first shot for the game is 47 metres out on the boundary and you hit the post, that's not going to shatter your confidence as much as strolling in 5 metres out and missing. So, I think it's clearly, and it's not a groundbreaking take, but it's a large portion of goal kicking is mental. Because you watch players, you go and watch you get to a game early and watch players taking shots for goal in the warm-up. They'll kick 9 out of 10.
Oh, they're never spraying him out in the full in the warm-up, are they?
No.
Some of the shanks you see live play, you don't see those
you
through
just
the warm-ups. Another player that sort of surprised me when you brought up the Max King, I thought, I reckon Jack Higgins is going to probably come up high on this one as well, but not quite Jack Higgins. But Jade Gresham's probably the second in terms of behind Liam Ryan is the next sort of most affected by confidence. Negative 17% accuracy when he misses his first shot, plus 17% when he nails his first shot. So a 34% swing for Jade Gresham.
Tom Papley would have been a name I would have.
Yeah, well, not in the top 6. So again, King came 6th with his swing. Ugle-Hagan
smaller sample size.
is a 29% swing, so he goes from negative 20% to plus 9%.
Are all these players just for this year?
Yeah. So and Noah Cumberland sort of up there as well, who we've already spoken about on the podcast. So again, this was looking at at least kicking a behind or a goal with your first shot and having another 10 shots, so a good sample size. It's not including players that have just kicked one goal and then followed up with another goal. But yeah, just sort of one of the quirky ones that came up that we found that, again, just thought we were missing a couple of games or something had broken with the Sydney query that we ran. But Sam Reid, so this season, if he's kicked a goal with his first shot, sort of not even looking at accuracy anymore, if he's kicked a goal with his first shot, he's had another 20 shots after it. So he follows up and might have another 1 or 2 shots per game. If he's kicked it behind with his first shot, he's followed it up with one more shot across the season. So could have been just one of the games where he's started with a behind. He's only followed that up with one more shot. So he
misses
hasn't
his
found
first
the ball.
And he goes missing.
And he hasn't touched it since. But
That's
if he kicks his
bizarre.
first, we've seen him get another 20 shots on goal. So if you talk about confidence player in terms of Matt
It's not
King
necessarily scoring.
accuracy,
It's
this
the
is
other way
actually
around.
just getting his hands to it. It's almost like if he gets his hands to it early and kicks it behind, he's almost not presenting or going as it's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but he almost goes missing if he misses his first shot.
It's funny you say Sam Reid because I reckon 2 or 3 weeks ago there was a Sydney game I was watching. I reckon it was the second quarter. Hadn't seen him at all. Took him Mark 30 out, kicked a goal, went back to the centre. Sydney got it out again, straight back to him. Kicked two in 90 seconds. So I certainly not a player I would have just picked, but it's one of those weird, quirky things, I guess.
You've got a few stats there. I'm probably throwing you under the bus because I've just thought of this. Are there any players that reverse the trend, and if they miss their first one, they then come out and have learned from their mistakes, say, and kick incredibly accurately after that?
Yeah,
I'm probably
never
throwing under the
happened
bus.
before.
No, I did. I know off the top of my head it's Brad Close. It was Brad Close. I just hadn't looked at the actual number. So,
Brad Close.
Yeah, big fan of him.
I mean, he goes from 18. So after.
Put some waiting music on while we wait for this one.
Yeah, he goes from he's 18. He's 18 plus 18% if he misses his first shot, plus 56% if he hits his first shot. So I said plus 30% is an elite number, plus 50%, 56% off the charts. But he's kicking above accuracy either way. But again, it probably, I mean, his number still goes up if he kicks a goal. So that's probably a funny one. He's probably in the highest in terms of if he kicks it behind, he's probably still got the best accuracy after it.
Yeah.
But yeah, in terms of the swing players, Bailey Banfield's another one that's down there.
Bit of X factor about him.
Yeah, so just another one that's sort of, I mean, he goes from negative 19% to plus 51%, 9 shots for the behind. So yeah, a bit of a smaller sample size with Bailey Banfield, but he's probably, the other way around. He goes from, if he misses his first shot, he's plus 40%. If he hits his first shot, he's actually negative 9% afterwards. So it's almost like he's happy with his first goal and sort of, he just accepts it after that.
There you go. Thanks to that Reddit user, NitroXYZ, opened a little can of worms that was fun to sort of unravel there. Rising star, Nick Daicos. Are we in agreement, Jake, that he's going to be taking it out?
Oh, yeah. I think it's clear that all the bookies paid this out 5-6 weeks ago. He's been the best player. Look, there's been a couple of other players that have really been impressive. Sam DeConing's been really good for the Cats. Jai Newcomb for the Hawks has become a really good player. But I think it's not really close that it's going to be Nick Daicos by the Flemington Straight.
Well, you were sort of thinking, is it the best first-year performance since? But we didn't have to go back far.
We didn't have to go back far, and I'm sure there are a few others around, and there are other players that have played their first year, older players. I know Michael Barlow always features quite high in these kind of first year
as a mature
ager. But in terms of just first year straight out of the draft, the player that I went back to only 3-4 years ago was Sam Walsh. And I thought, has Nick Daicos, for all the talk of Nick Daicos, and I just want to preface this by saying I think he deserves the Rising Star. I think he's going to be a fantastic football player. He's going to be an elite player for 15 years. I have no doubt about that. But I think people have already forgotten how good Sam Walsh was in his first year. And I'm not talking about how good Sam Walsh is today or last year, where he polled 30 Brownlow votes. I'm talking about first year, straight into the middle. I know he played on the wing a bit too. Christian has some numbers on that, but just more so around the football, more playing that more contested style, I think. And it's not a criticism of Daicos because he's not playing that. You can't criticize someone for playing a different position. But
how do you compare them?
The Carlton team that Walsh came into, having to be he essentially came in and halfway through the season he was the second best player on the team. Daicos hasn't had the pressure to do that. So I don't know. I don't know what the numbers suggest, but I think people have quickly forgotten how good Sam Walsh was year one.
And this goes back even further. And I remember, I think 2014 or 15, Patrick Cripps versus Jesse Hogan was being debated for the NAB Rising Star, and I was sort of in the All Australian selection meetings with the voters at that time, and they just had different examples of what is it harder to be in your first year. Is it harder to be an inside midfielder in your first year or a key forward? And I don't think I don't think you can be right or wrong on either way, but there was a lot of back and forth between the selectors and the voters of what should we value more. Very similar to Walsh and Daicos. What do we value more? Daicos is really link-up, outside player, 26 touches per game, 405 metres gained per game, sort of puts him in the top three at Collingwood. Obviously, number one ball winner at Collingwood, top three for metres gained. Whereas Walsh was still 25 disposals per game, but 312 metres, so fewer metres, but more clearances, more contested possessions, more tackles. So slightly less of the ball, slightly less metres gained, slightly less score involvements for Sam Walsh, but more of the inside stuff. So again, you're asking who has had a better year. It's probably, what is it harder to be at 18? Is it harder to be an inside midfielder or sort of a link-up player?
It probably is,
I'm
but it
giving
also
a slight nod to Walsh.
Depends what your team needs at the time.
Exactly. That's what we're saying. We can't put blame on Daicos or anything, but when you totality up their season to say, all right, who had a better season, sometimes their role just has to be taken into account.
You're building a team from scratch. You've got those two on the cards as you pick one, but you can only pick one of those. Who are you taking?
If they're both
the same age.
Both the same age, I can have the choice of both for their career. I still think Sam Walsh is the player I'm taking. Yeah. It's not by much, and I could look stupid saying that in 10 years' time, but I don't think I will. I think in terms of football players, Sam Walsh might be the most consistent footballer ever for someone from 18 to 21.
Well, you keep banging on in this office that you think he'll be the next 400 gamer.
I think he'll play 400 games. I think he'll captain Carlton I think he'll be like Scott Pendlebury and captain a team for a decade. I think he's the perfect role model player, perfect citizen, perfect teammate,
perfect man.
He's a fantastic player, and there was a lot of debate. I remember we were debating with Connor Rosie, like in that year, who was. And Christian brought up a name, a blast from the past, Sydney Stack, a name that we had.
Well, round 20, Sydney Stack was better than Sam Walsh, apparently. So
how many games has Sydney Stack played since then? So yeah, it's funny how we kind of do flip flop on this, and I'm guilty of doing it too. But I think Walsh, what he's been able to do in his first now 4 seasons, is massively impressive. I don't know. I can't think of a player who's been as good and as consistent in their first 4 years. The consistency is what I'm talking about. Like, there are other players that have had great seasons or burst on the scene. I know Chris Judd won a Brownlow in his third or fourth season, and Nat Fyfe was polling Brownlow votes early on. But it's the consistency of Walsh. I was up at the Gabba last week watching Carlton play. He had two touches in the first quarter. And you think, gee, maybe this is a game he's really going to struggle. He comes back out at a quarter time, and he still has a massive impact on the game. Finishes high 20s or something like that. So it's his consistency week in, week out. Now, Daicos is pretty consistent too.
He'll build that over time.
He will. Yeah. But the thing with Daicos, I've noticed, and he's a first year player, and he's young, and he's going to be a gun. So it's not a criticism. It's just the reality is, since clubs have started to put a little bit of time into him, those 28, 29, 30 touches a game and 700 metres gained and all this link-up play and uncontested ball has sort of evaporated a little bit, and the numbers have sort of started to drop. So I think if, off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but if you look at his numbers over the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks, I would imagine they're on a bit of a downward trend, and that's because teams are putting time into him. But that's a compliment in itself.
It was always his own fault too. It was that 40 disposal game and 3 goals he had against Adelaide, and teams sort of went, "Oh, we better put some work into this bloke." So.
Daicos' name comes up on another little interesting list that you've got there, Christian. We're going to tease the deep dive again this week. So Jared Barker's going to write an article that'll come out tomorrow. That's Wednesday, depending on when you're listening, about some of the more clutch players in the AFL.
This is a really good one.
Big shout out to Jared, because that's something. I mean, again, we're very, us in the office, we're very media inquiry driven. A lot of our time is basically for you guys. We don't have a lot of time just to play around with the numbers for our own. We got to do it for a reason and for a story. But it is clutch players, probably something we've thought about before, but we never really had a great formula. And
it's hard to define.
Yeah, but
it's hard to
working
quantify.
with Jared and putting our head together, we've sort of come up with, the basic formula is it's looking at all fourth quarters played where the margin was at least within 12 points at three-quarter time, and the final margin finishes within 12 points. So a game that was close at three-quarter time that was never sort of blown out by the end of the game.
24-point margin total. So between 12 and 12 for Team A and Team B.
Yeah.
But it can go outside of that and come back in?
Yeah, exactly. We don't know what
So long as the quarter starts and ends within the parameters of 12 points either side.
Yeah, you think they're pretty clutch quarters where the whole, a whole quarter,
it's under pressure.
Most of the quarter you're separated by only 2 goals. So again, we looked at a whole range of stats, and you'll be able to see through the deep dive of, guys that have the most marks and goals. Because again, when we talk clutch players, I think everyone quickly goes to the goals. Robbie Gray, the most clutch player. I think we're going to talk Robbie Gray a bit later too. One of the most clutch players because he's kicked goals after the siren. But even talking to Jared, it's like, well, clutch players have to do a lot. There's a lot more happening in that quarter than just the final goal. So who's getting the clearances, the tackles, and things like that?
Yep.
So again, I just thought so the one I found interesting, again, we're looking at total numbers of these quarters. So from 2016 to 2022, we can sort of see which team has played the most close last quarters, and it's clearly Sydney, because if you look at the individual quarters played from 2016 in terms of close final quarters, Luke Parker's had 37 of these quarters where it was at least 12 points at three-quarter time, 12 points at final time, full time. 36 for Jake Lloyd, 35 for Papley, 33 for Rampy.
They played a few tight games this one.
32 for Mills. So they're all up there. And the next two names are 32 Jack Crisp and 30 for Braden Maynard. So again, Collingwood, and I think 10 or 11 of those almost been in a row because I think a lot of their three-quarter time margins were within 12 this season. So they're the guys. So again, Sydney and Collingwood supporters are probably...
Crisp has played more tight games than Pendlebury?
Since 2016 to 2022.
Oh,
so
2016,
32.
sorry.
So that would also include if Pendlebury, and again, if Pendlebury got subbed out at three-quarter time in any of those games because of an injury, he wouldn't have. So this isn't looking at how many games you played. It's just that
good one. Not
quarter.
a good one for Matt Taberner.
Yeah, he might be missing on a few. But again, as I said, Jared's going to go through all the different stats. But starting off, simple disposals, who sort of wins the ball, and Jack McRae comes up on top. He comes up on top nearly every time you look at a disposal winner. So in close final quarters, he's averaged 8.9 disposals per game, which is right around his normal average, and nothing sort of changes there. So second, though, is Brad Crouch. So again, we know as being a big ball magnet, but if we look at Brad Crouch 2016 to 2022, I think he's 17th for disposals per game. But in clutch quarters, if we want to call these, he goes up to second at 8.6. So he's probably one of the big ones that jumps up.
Gets his hand on the footy.
But even a guy that probably jumps up from, again, I don't have his exact ranking, but I would assume it's probably outside the top 150th disposal winners in this time, but he's actually the 5th or 6th highest in a clutch quarter. And this is, again, one of those ones you run the query, you're not sure what you're going to get. The name comes up and you go, I think we've nailed this query, Jared. Callum Ward. Callum Ward comes up as the 5th highest ball winner in clutch quarters in that time. But as I said, he's not a continual ball magnet. So he's
but he comes to the fore when the ball's on when the game's on the line.
Yeah,
obviously.
and you can again you can think back and picture times.
So what does he average in those tight games?
So it's 7.4. So in the quarter,
7.4. So that would extrapolate out to 30 for the game.
Yeah.
And he rarely would have 30 for a game, Callum Ward.
Yeah.
So that is a huge jump from him.
And another name that pops up into the top 10 is Jared Pollack, who's actually had 15 of these types of quarters. So a good sample size, 7.1 disposal. And again, funny name, but I think back, I don't know if he was a super sub. There's a few games for Port Adelaide where he really broke them open late and won. And that's probably
North paid so
exactly
much
that's what I was going to say. It's probably part of his contract now.
That pace and drive off the wing and just kicking goals.
When you need to get the ball forward in a late last quarter, and he can move the ball, say he runs 15 and kicks at 60, that's a 75-metre ball.
And he's still running as fast as he was in the 5-minute mark because of his fitness. So, yeah, just a few of the names that popped up. And, again, you mentioned Nick Daicos. Again, I looked at minimum of 10 quarters played, so he didn't quite come into that way. He's played 6, but if we include down to 6 quarters, he becomes the 6th best clutch disposal winner. So again, we know he's a ball magnet.
Sam Walsh not on that list, Jake.
But we know that Collingwood have had plenty of clutch situations this year, and we sort of said Nick Daicos has been one of the ones that stood up for him.
There you go. Well, he's taken into account even more. I think there's going to be a few different subcategories of what we would define as quote unquote clutch. So if you do want to keep an eye on that, that'll be on espn.com.au/AFL Wednesday morning. So whenever you listen to this, check out the website because it'll be quite comprehensive and quite interesting.
Oh, very excited to read that one.
Jake, there's a team looming, and they're in the 8 at the moment, but they've just got this. The Blues, well, they're hanging on by the skin of their teeth. But there's just starting to be a little bit of interest built in the Tigers and what Richmond's doing. Another big win on the weekend. Their scoring profile has gone through the roof in the last 3 weeks after a down few weeks that included a draw and a loss to the Suns. Tom Lynch is back. He's kicked 8, 4 and 4.
They lost to North.
I'm trying to say the good things at the moment, but
8,
4 and 4. So he's kicked 16 goals in 3 weeks.
He's kicked 16 in 3 weeks, and I think he's kicked all 16 since half time of the game against Brisbane. I think he kicked 4 in the second half, at least 3, if not 4. So in his last 2.5 games, he's kicked basically 16 goals. He's been the difference, in my opinion.
Well, yes, but also there's just this. I've just started to notice, having watched them over the past few weeks, there's a real sense of this 2017 to 2020 Tigers outfit again. Handball meters gained, and we talked about this on the podcast a few years ago when we sort of worked out that meters gained by handball, that is by run and carry and handball, all included. The Tigers were far and away the best side within that sort of that 2017 to 2020 period, doubling the next best team, which I think was Melbourne at the time. They're just starting to get that aspect of the game back again, and it's working again. And I just get the feeling if they can sort of finish 7th, 6th, or whatever it is, I would be pretty petrified as a team that finished 5th or hosting them in a semi-final, that they might just be able to get the better of me in the final.
I might just give myself a little bit of a pump up. I did say this last week. We went through the 4 teams, and again, I looked at it last week, and it clearly stood out when we looked at Richmond versus Carlton versus Bulldogs versus Saints. Richmond were on just another stratosphere compared to those other 3. Yeah. And they're actually sort of working their way past Melbourne, Brisbane. I think Sydney still got them in the last, but I'm talking last 5 or 6 weeks. And we do know that late season form sort of holds you in good stead for the finals.
Well, is Geelong and Sydney, are they the only 2 teams in better? I know Collingwood had a long winning streak, but...
Again, Richmond's numbers in terms of their domination of territory, their points scored, their ability to score from turnovers is better than Collingwood.
If Richmond play Collingwood tomorrow in a final, are you?
Is Mason Cox playing?
Yeah. Is Dusty playing? Are you taking Richmond? I think most people would be.
I would probably lean towards the Tigers. I mean, they've had in the last 3 weeks, they've had 28 scoring shots, 29 scoring shots, 29 scoring shots. Christian, you've got some really good numbers on their profile of like you said, scores per inside 50.
So the last 3 weeks, number 1. Points for, number 1 points for scoring, once inside 50, second points from turnovers, second points from stoppages. So score a lot, get it in there a lot, and can score from both of the sources really, really highly. We know when they were dominant in 17, they were probably outside the top 10 or maybe even 9th or 8th for points scored from clearances. To be able to have high scores from turnovers and clearances makes them a scary proposition.
The other player, so Lynch has been super important, but the other player I think is probably underrated competition-wide is Dion Prestia.
Yep.
That game against the Cats where he was knocked out early from Tom Stewart, they really felt that and they really missed him there, and I think they suffered the effects of that. He makes them such a better side because he does all the hard grunt work in the middle. He wins the contested ball, he wins the clearances, he sets up that play like you're talking about on the outside where they do run and carry and they spread so well. He is pivotal to how the Tigers play, and you can make the case Prestia is just about their most important player.
And we talked about Maurice Rioli Jr. last week and the impact that he's been able to have as a pressure player. and some of the scores that he's been able to generate as a result of his turnovers. We saw against the Hawks, continued again. Pretty sure he had another goal and a few scores from his turnovers.
Yeah.
And we flagged it last week, and now everyone else has sort of jumped on the bandwagon as well, which is good to see. Thanks
for listening.
And Rioli Jr. has been the sub at times. So the impact that they've been able to get out of players who might not be entrenched in the 22 as well has been pivotal.
Oh, look at Noah Cumberland. What he's done in the last 4 or 5 weeks is, probably top 3 in terms of goals, scoreboard impact behind Lynch and Riewoldt. And again, it goes back to great clubs, great culture. They've been able to do this in the past, and I keep saying Noah Cumberland reminds me of Jacob Townsend. He's doing it at the same time of the year.
Bit of X factor about him.
Yeah, even you talk about your subs, the use of Rioli as a sub. Even someone like Daniel Rioli, really felt like he's a half forward, goal kicking half forward to start with. They moved him into defence and sort of made him concentrate on defence. Now they've given him that license. They've gone, all right, you can now start at half back but play like a half forward. And the ability he's got to now kick the goals, because I think it is they trust him to be able to defend now that they've taught him that side of the game, that they've also given him license. I think he, in the last 3 weeks, has been one of their keys as well.
Tigers, can they win the flag?
They can't.
Okay.
Sorry to burst the Tiger.
We've just had this whole segment pumping them up.
Look, Christian, I'm going to give Christian credit for this because he said this earlier and I agree 1,000%. Richmond, and we just gave you all the reasons why they can beat anyone in the top 8 right now. Anyone in the league. Despite the fact that we're just talking about, it was only a few weeks ago, we were saying how they lost to Gold Coast, how they lost to North, how did they not have that shot against Freo to win the game. They can beat anyone, especially if Martin comes back and even if he's playing at 60-70% of what he can. They can beat anyone, make no mistake. But can they beat 4 good teams back to back to back to back? No, I don't think any team's doing that. I know the Bulldogs did it in 2016. That is so out of the box and rare. It's just not happening again. And that's why they can't do it. They're not in the top 4. And that's why there's so much pressure on Melbourne on Friday night playing Brisbane, because the reigning premier, trying to go back to back. We all thought it was going to be the start of a dynasty at the end of, as we always do, whoever wins the flag, it's a dynasty. It doesn't matter who it is. But they lose and Freo win. They're not making top 4. And I can't see even them, winning 4 straight finals.
Yeah, well, we talked about the Ds and the fact that they were able to secure a win that gets them a little bit closer to that top 4 berth again. Cozzy Pickett, the winner. Again, we just see though, Jake, unfortunately, there are some parts of society and footy that just haven't caught up with the times and know that racism is not a part of this game. And again, we found that an Indigenous player was racially abused on social media following a football match. Yeah,
it's pretty pathetic and sad, isn't it, that every week we seem to see this. We saw it last week with Callum Archie. We've seen it again this week with Cozzy Pickett. And we see it weekly, and it probably happens 10 times more than it's actually players actually. There's probably a lot of players that don't feel comfortable sharing it. My question is, and this is something I thought, and I'm sure there are reasons why, but clubs coming out and posting a statement and a tweet saying that we don't condone this and we stand by Cozzy or Callum Archer, whoever. There's all well and good, but it really doesn't do anything. I want to name and shame these people. Why can't we name and shame? Why can't we put their photo and their name out there? That is going to deter people far more than an anonymous someone did this and you don't really know what it said. 1,000%
with you, but problem with social media is I can just grab your photo from your ESPN one.
If you dox someone,
Jake Davidson, and just then they're outing your photo with a fake name and said this is the guy that said it, but we don't know what's true on social media. So I'm with you, but I think that's the problem.
Well, you made a point before about to social media because you're far more likely to say something stupid like that. Is someone going to really, if you ask Cozzy Pickett, how many times have you copped that sort of rubbish on social media? I'm sure it's happened a lot. But how many times do people come up to you in the street and say that? I would imagine, not that I know, but I would imagine it's less face-to-face.
I think it's a step, isn't it? You're more likely to do it on social media.
That's what I'm saying.
More likely to shout it out over the fence.
But you're not going to do it if you see him at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
But you said it earlier before we started recording, Matt, that why with social media, it's such a massive part of our lives and society now. Why can't these platforms verify people before you start using it? Why can't they get your full name, your address, your phone number, your license, verify everything about you rather than just being able to create an account and start abusing people?
Well, yeah. Look, there are a lot of questions.
It only takes that 99% of people do the right thing on social media. But there's that 1% that do want to start this crap, abusing players for all sorts of things. And it's not just the racism is horrible, but there's more. It's not just that. We spoke with Josh Dunkley last year about the people's
abuse.
multis.
Yeah.
If he has 24 disposals in a game, he can't check his social media comments and his messages because people will be abusing the players because they didn't get a 25 or a 30 or something like that.
They're not abusing the players; they're abusing us. I'll tell you that.
Well, that's the thing.
Champion
So
Dacos it. Yeah,
it's garbage.
It's garbage. That's it. I mean, I know that the social media companies don't have a lot of power, and if they were told to get power, they would lose users, and obviously that's against their commercial interests, and so there's a whole lot of unraveling you can do from there. But I think we're just beyond it.
I just think the statement that comes out saying that we don't condone it. Would I be surprised if we see another one in round 23? No. It's almost like expected to happen, and it's
a bit thoughts and prayers-y, isn't it?
That's the sad part of it all, and I think if I'm someone that was going to write the comment like that, I might think twice, knowing that my name and everything about me is going to go straight up there. But I do understand what you're saying. It's very easy how hard is it to go and copy your photo and create an account?
Is the hype justified or is it hyperbole? Segment where I'll say a statement. You guys tell me whether the hype is justified or I'm speaking in hyperbole. Jake, there'll be 90,000 at the G this Sunday to watch Carlton and Collingwood. There will.
89,000 is my line. That's the over.
That's not 90. I said 90.
Yeah, I know, and I'm leaning towards. I'm on the over. I think. Yeah, I think 90. I'd be surprised if it was less than 85. I would be pretty surprised. I think it's far more likely the crowd figure will start with a 9 than it will.
It's tough to get a 9.
Than it will a 7.
A sellout, quote unquote, relies on a lot of things in the home and away season.
I know, but I think it's most likely. It's most likely to be 80 something. But if it's not, if you tell me right now the crowd will not start with an 8, I would say the favourite will be a 9, not a 7.
Do you want to have it closest to the pin?
Let's do it.
Go on.
90,000. Bang on. Well, I just always love when people go 91,417. Like that it can't be an even 90,000.
Christian, any thoughts?
Yeah, probably. Again, I'm very surprised that it's a sellout. I think I read last night that it was a sellout, but then talking to you and getting the facts of what a ticket actually means to be sold. I think they need to have.
Be there. It can't just be. We sold 100,000 tickets to 100,000. What's the capacity? 100,024.
Yeah. There'll be thousands of reserve seat holders who can't turn up, and there's no way to resell these tickets that I know of in the AFL at the moment.
No, but my point is, you got 2 of the 4 biggest clubs in the sport, and it's the final game or the second last game of the season for the home and away season, the last game for these 2 clubs. You got one side to win to play top 4, to finish top 4, and you got the other one needing to win to play finals for the first time in 9 years. And on top of that, it's arguably the biggest football rivalry the sport has had. I know it's not the same rivalry as it was 30, 40 years ago.
Well, we were trying to work out it's the biggest Carlton-Collingwood clash since, and we kind of came to a consensus, not without having looked at it too scientifically, that it was the biggest clash since the 1988 semi-final.
Yeah, so that sums up. And just looking at, forget finals, what's the last, I can't think of a home and away game that has had so much interest in it. The only one that really kind of thought was St Kilda Geelong were both undefeated in 2009, but that was early, that was midway through the season. St Kilda and Geelong, it's not Carlton Collingwood.
One of the great modern games.
Was that at Marvel as well?
It was 54,000, and that was a sellout, and they were still 2,000 short of capacity.
Mate, okay, you probably got me. I think this year's more anticipated, but I think you've just skipped ahead. Melbourne Geelong last year down at Skilled Stadium, like that was
for the minor premiership.
Yeah, it got bigger as the game went on because it was close. But yeah, we always sort of jump ahead and say.
Did you have a number in head?
I don't know. I was just looking at last time. So they played earlier this year on a Sunday, 80,620. So I'd go 88.5. Just under 90.
It's 10. Yeah, right. It's 10% more.
I'll go 86. So if it's any lower,
86. You started yesterday. You came in and said it'll be 67,000.
No, I said it. Okay, I didn't commit to that number. I just said it's going to be a lot less than what you think. Because you came in saying 95, and now you've padded your way down to 90.
I'm closer to 95 than you are 67.
I'm just saying it won't be as big as what you think, because there's weather, people have things on, the reserve seat holders won't turn up. There'll be a lot of other, the car park will probably close or something like that.
The highest attended game of the year was Anzac Day, 84,200.
That was a sellout, wasn't it?
Yeah, but that was Collingwood when they weren't flying, and it was Essendon who've been Essendon
Still
all year.
Technically a quote-unquote sellout.
No.
We'll come back and revisit this.
So, sorry, what are we saying? 90?
86.
88.
All right, what are we playing for? What are the stakes?
I don't know. What's the 100th episode goodie bag you're going to bring in that was about 10 episodes
Been
ago?
postponed to the 200th.
Last thing before we wrap things up, Robbie Gray's going to announce his retirement. One of Port's all-time greats. We talked about Freo when David Mundy retired, about their Mount Rushmore, the four faces of the club. Power in the Power era. Is he on it, Robbie Gray?
He's got a very good case to be on it. One of my favourite players, I know I have a few, but Robbie Gray was always a player I love watching, and always a player that I wanted on my team. There's a lot of players I like, but he was always one that I wanted on my team. Smart footballer, really crafty, clever around goal. Had a few injuries later in his career, probably missed a little bit of footy. It would have been good to see him play more. We talk about clutch players. He obviously had that memorable goal after the siren against Carlton.
Some big showdown moments.
That was at the Gabba?
Yeah, it was, yeah. Five-time showdown
Five-time showdown medalist. Now, if that's not clutch, I don't know what is. So, great player. Is he on the Mount Rushmore? I think, yeah. I mean, he's... Treadray seems to be the first pick.
Gray.
Then I feel like you can throw a blanket over 5 or 6 of them.
Corns times 2.
Corns times
Wanganeen?
2.
Was he maybe before his...
Did he play his best footy at the Bombers?
He won a Brownlow there.
Won his Brownlow there. Wines? Does Wines get a Guernsey?
Wines. Franco's a big one.
Rosie.
And then
Matty Primus mightn't have done his... when his coach wasn't...
Yeah, Matty Primus. Yeah, exactly. Probably ruined his legacy a little bit. He's coaching.
Yeah.
I think I got Robbie Gray in there.
Yeah.
Treadray and... I think I got Treadray and Franco as my top 2. Josh Franco.
And then Gray?
Yeah,
who are the other two? Gray and Corn?
You'd have to be up
Gray,
there. Again, I don't know.
Chad?
I can't even pick
Kane?
between the Cornses. That's why I struggle to put one of the Corns on there, because I don't know which one I'd pick, really.
I think Robbie Gray will Robbie Gray be remembered as a better player than Travis Boak? I think so.
I think so,
Skipper
just
of the
because
club,
of the
though.
highlights
Wines might be the best of the three of them by the time he's done.
Maybe Port fans can let us know on Twitter. At
Who's
Footy
the
Tips.
Who's the Port Mount Rushmore? Yeah, these are good.
One,
in the off season we should do. We should almost do 18 episodes and
just the Mount Rushmore discussion. That
Gold
might be 5 minutes
Gold
each.
Coast one might be a bit grim, but
I think we'll wrap things up there. Like I said, at Footy Tips on Twitter. If you have any questions for us, if you have any comments, if you have any feedback, don't forget AFLW back soon as well. Listen to the girls. Marissa and Sarah do a great job on the podcast. That is also live. Bombers fans, if you kind of want to, placate yourself, therapeutically listen to Rowan, there's that episode as well. So there's plenty happening with the podcast at the moment. So do make sure you tune in when you can. To everyone at home, we will speak to you in the next episode.
Listen to all the latest episodes by subscribing to the ESPN Footy Pod, wherever you get your podcasts.